I'm going to talk about genetically encoded biosensors. In other words, I built live cell-based biosensors, and today I want to focus on the application on drug screening, especially from like oriental medicine screening. Okay. So I've been generally interested in various platforms of biosensor and nanomaterial-based drug delivery system. But today's talk will only focus on cell-based biosensors. There are various platforms that can be utilized for biosensing. Oftentimes, they utilize the purified form of proteins and carry out experiment in like test tubes or like kind of in vitro platforms. While useful, this kind of test format results may or may not be relevant to what's really happening in biological system. So there are clear limitations using the results for biological interpretation. Alternatively, cell-based biosensors have several advantages because we use cells as a screening platform. Not visible. Okay. We can actually screen biomolecules in live cell context, which is very similar to biological system. And because of that, we can do real-time monitoring of protein expression, protein trafficking, and protein-protein interactions. And unlike in vitro immunosensors that screen targets based on the structure, in the cell-based sensors, we can screen targets based on their functions. So this is valid for drug screening platforms. So I focused on drug screening using this platform later on. And finally, once we generate sensor cells by transforming the animal cells using detector and reporter proteins, their daughter cells will also have this sensing capability. So we don't have to generate new sensors every time when we screen. So we can build a self-sustainable cell-based sensor platform. So as I said, when we build cell-based sensors, there are two major components. The first is a recognition element, and the second is a detection element. For the recognition element, we need some sort of receptors or enzymes or whatever that we are interested in. So when people choose recognition element, it's very related to what is their real interest, scientific interest. So they can utilize receptors, like if they are interested in like a receptor and ligand interaction, or we can use enzymes if we are interested in enzymatic action. Alternatively, we can also build chimeric fusion proteins to detect specific targets. So that's more like diverse. But in case of a reporter, what has to do with it is once a cell recognizes the target, they have to let others know, let the researchers know something is happening here. So in order to do that, there are several good reporter systems developed, and only a few of them are available, and they are kind of universally utilized. The representative ones include fluorescence turn-on or turn-off sensors, and FRET-based sensors, and BILC-based sensors. So FRET-based sensor, of course, these are very useful and often utilized, but they do have some limitations because in case of a FRET-based detection, FRET-based detection, their signal is so low, and compared to the signal, the background is always very high. So they have to work with like a very small signal increase, which will often make it very difficult to interpret the data. And in case of bimolecular luciferase or fluorescence complementation, these split reporters, split reporters here, They do have native affinity, so they can bind without the presence of targets to give a false positive signal. And sometimes in the presence of target, once they are reconstituted, these proteins oftentimes misfold, so generate like false negative signal. So we do need to address these limitations. And so I was interested in how to address that kind of limitations of current reporter systems. So in order to do that, I built a reporter using a system called INTIN. What INTIN can do is they can conjugate the flanking sequences. Okay. The flanking sequences marked green into a mature protein through an amide bond, and they can excise itself out during the process. So what's actually happening in terms of like real mechanism, they can cut this orange line to amide bond, and they can generate new amide bond marked down here. So inside the cell, like as we want to, we can cut amide bond and we can reconstitute amide bond. And this is a really strong tool because it does not require any external source of energy or any cofactors. But at the same time, we have a lot of tools to modulate this INTIN-mediated reaction. First, like example is split intins. I'm not going to talk about details there. And also we can also control this protein, this INTIN-mediated reaction using various approaches. So with this tool, what I was planning to do was making signal peptide, because signal peptide activity is only controlled by primary sequence. So if I have correct peptide sequence, then that signal peptide is active. And we do not have to worry about binding mediated false positive or misfolding mediated false negatives in the system. So using this, we designed a reporter. So once our sensor protein sees target here, they will form like heterodimer. And here, this split signal peptide will be reconstituted by INTIN, and this activated signal peptide will carry the fluorescence cargo to targeted location. So that's the basic approach. And using this approach, we have built several sensors. First sensor we built was a calcium sensor, because calcium is a very well-known second messenger, and also the calcium binding calmodulin and calmodulin binding domains are well known. So if they see this calcium here, they will be forming heterodimers to activate INTIN and activate signal peptide. So originally, cytosol localized fluorescence signal will migrate to the nucleus if they have increased calcium signal. And you can see before the calcium influx, the signals, red fluorescence signals are localized in the cytosol, and once calcium level increases, they migrate to the nucleus. It might be difficult to see, so you can see this graph analysis here. Cytosolic red fluorescence will move to the nucleus. And the working mechanism was confirmed by field control experiment. And I will skip that part. And because we have built sensors using cells, unlike like in vitro platform, we can see cell-induced calcium signaling. So in order to test that, we stimulated this target sensor cell using histamine. And histamine is a well-known material that induce release of internal calcium reservoir. So they will increase the calcium concentration inside the cell. So when we treated our sensor cells using histamine, we can see signal translocation to the nucleus as expected. So we have proven that the cell-based sensors seem to be working, and our signal peptide-based reporter to be effective. So, okay, so next, I wanted to see what other types of signaling molecules can we screen. And the hormones seem to be a good target. So we have chosen the glucocorticoid cortisol which is a well-known, which is a well-known stress hormone, and glucocorticoid bind to glucocorticoid receptor, and they will translocate to the nucleus, so like this. And once they go in, intermediate reaction will be activated to report, and this signal peptide will bring this red fluorescence to the membrane. So that way we can monitor the presence of target. So we have tested, and it's very difficult to see here, but if you see this data, as time goes on, after cortisol treatment, signal migrate to the membrane. And this was good for publication, but as you can see, it took 12 hours to see the report, to see the results, and that was because of that CAA-X tag. It takes 12 hours for it to be prenulated and moved to the membrane. And we wanted to utilize this system for drug screening, a little more practical application. So we had to modify it so it can respond quicker. So instead of a membrane, we this time used nuclear export signal. So this nuclear localized signal will move out to the cytosol if they see this hormonal stimuli. So this system worked much faster, so we could even report like the presence of target in 5 minutes. So again, the cortisol treatment, you can see this is signal migrating to the cytosol like this. And using this sensor, before we go for any unknown compound screening, we went ahead and screened known agonist, antagonist, and also structural analogs. So these are compounds we screened, and dexamethasone is a well-known GR agonist. So when we screened dexamethasone, sensor responded. But cortisone and estradiol, even though they have high structural similarity, they are not GR effectors. So in this case, the sensor cells did not respond. And in case of mifepristone, which is also well-known GR agonist, and then you can see the signal coming out. And this was important because when we screen these targets using antibodies in immunoassays, for instance, cortisol antibody will have like a cross-reactivity with the cortisone, minimum of 25%, and it can go up to 75% cross-reactivity. But in this case, they screen based on function, and we can rule out and clearly discriminate those structural analogs. So using this, okay, what can we screen? Like we wanted to do something unknown. And I was thinking, like people do a lot of like this aromatherapy when they are feeling, I'm stressed, right? So I thought, why not like aroma oils? So I purchased a few like essential oil extracts and then screened those. And then I did have eucalyptus, lavender, sweet orange, niaouli, and peppermint oils. And luckily, in first trial, I got a hit. So peppermint seemed to activate our sensor cells quite a bit. And we need to make sure this was specific. It wasn't like some random event. So I co-treated peppermint oil with the CPA, which is well-known antagonist. So I can suppress the signal if it's mediated by GR. And yes, the signal went away, which proves our signal coming from peppermint was a specific interaction mediated by glucocorticoid receptor. Okay, so peppermint oil seems to be active. Then which component in peppermint oil is the active one as a GR effector? So we found 5 different components in peppermint oil extract. There are a few more, but we just selected from the top 5 abundant ingredients here. L-menthol, limonen, and D-limonen, L-menthone, and R-terpinin were tested. And when we did that, lucky enough, we got 2 hits. Both L-menthol and L-limonen turned on positive signal from sensors. So we later did the literature search, and we found that L-menthol has been suggested as GR agonist by some other literature. But in case of L-limonan, it has never been mentioned as a GR agonist previously. So it looks like we found something very new. So we focused on L-limonan analysis. First, we performed the in vitro experiment using purified GR, like fluorescence anisotropy assay here. And when we did that, we could see the cortisol GR binding is about 1,000 times stronger compared to cortisol and L-limonan binding here. So apparently that is why people did not find L-limonan as GR agonist earlier. But in our system, they do have about 50% activity, so just half of the binding. So this is also important as a drug screening platform, because once we lose when we screen various molecules, if we find false positives, this can be removed later on during the further screening process. But if we rule out these components at earlier stage, it's very hard to pick them up again and that develop as a drug. So we wanted to see, okay, L-limonan seem to be GR agonist, and what is their agonist function? So there are 4 different types of modulators: agonist and active antagonist, and SEGRA and passive antagonist. Agonists regulate all these gene expressions. And this one, the top one, is related to muscle atrophy. So the kind of side effect of steroid treatment, they lose muscle differentiation ability. And this third one is related to anti-inflammatory effect. And in case of SEGRA, selective GR agonist, they do not have this muscle atrophic effect, but they still possess anti-inflammatory response. And between these two, agonist and SEGRA, which one of those the L-limonan can function as? So when we looked at the first gene regulation, GR-mediated transactivation, we can see cortisol-induced activation, but limonan did not. And if you see muscle atrophy effect, while dexamethasone and cortisol inhibit muscle differentiation, L-limonan did not. And also in the presence of L-limonan, we can see myosin heavy chain expression. So they do not have this first effect. So apparently it's not on GR agonist. And if it's a selective GR agonist, they should have effect on trans repression and FKB mediated repression. And here, dexamethasone, of course, it's a positive control. And limonan, okay, did have quite high NF-kappa mediated trans-repression effect. So we found this new SEGRA molecule using these biosensors and have patented L-limonan as a new SEGRA molecule. And then we went ahead and then expanded our screening palette. So we do have Oriental Medicine department in hospital right next to our building. So we collaborated with professors there. And we were provided with several Oriental Medicine extracts, including deer antler, the Nogyong, and ginseng, red ginseng, garlic, onion, reishi, yeongji, and then red bean. And when we did that, we see 3 positive coming up. So first was Nogyong, and then ginseng and red ginseng. And they are more or less of the positive control, because in case of deer antler, it's coming from animal source. So they possess, deer antler possess native endogenous cortisol inside it. So that's probably why we see this high signal here. And in case of ginseng and red ginseng, as Professor Lee talked about in the earlier talk, they do have a lot of this nuclear receptor binding affinity. And amongst that, RG1 and RE are known to function as a GR agonist. So that's probably why we see signals here. So we expanded the screening test samples and test palettes. 구즈베리, 구기자, 쿠닐리아니, 산수유, 라즈베리, and turmeric, 강황, 당귀, 하수오, and licorice, 감초. And these were tested, and we were expecting actually licorice may give a positive results, but no. And we were expecting because licorice is known to have a lot of steroid-like molecules inside it, but no. But luckily, we see some signals from 당귀 and 하수오 here. So, the component analysis. We also included RG1 and RE, ginsenoside molecules, and then these three are major components in 당귀, and these two are major components in 하수오. And when we did that, okay, RG1 and RE, as expected, gave a positive signal, and in 당귀, the decreasing gave a positive signal. And decreasing's activity has been previously reported too, so it looks like we have kind of reproduced what's expected. And again, decreasing and the GR interaction is about 100 to 1,000 times weaker compared to cortisol, and which was also why decreasing has not been identified as a GR agonist. And decreasing did not activate GRE-mediated gene expression, but they can successfully suppress NF-kappa B-mediated transrepression. So it looks like they function as SEGRA as well. 네, 짧게. Okay, and then the Professor Sang-Keun Kim and Tae-Han Yuk and also Ki-Seop Yang, the professors provided these pharmacopuncture materials for us, and then the honeybee venom and Sichuan pepper and the Lemania glutinosa and the placenta. And we were expecting this honeybee venom and this Sichuan pepper may have activity because they are often used to treat inflammation. So when we treated it with our GR sensor, the honeybee venom showed a positive response even in 1/1,000 dilution, and the chancho gave a signal when it's 1/100 dilution, and Jihuang did not respond, and Jahaga did not respond either. And we made sure it was not because of the cytotoxicity of any of these materials, so they didn't show any cell death in the tested conditions. And again, in honeybee venom, it was the positive, and what kind of ingredient made it positive, active component. So we tested the melittin and epamine, and both seem to be working. So melittin showed a stronger signal, and epamine showed weaker, but it still showed a signal. So we designed a different sensor. So if GR translocate to the nucleus, they start interacting with HDAC to regulate NF-kappa B-mediated gene repression to control the inflammation. So when we tested it, honeybee venom showed dose-responsive response, and then this melittin also did, but in case of epamine, it did not show any response. So we're thinking epamine probably is active antagonist. And as time is up, I will just skip few slides and talk about just the key points. So we wanted to make this sensor to work inside the animal in vivo systems. So in mice, we were able to see this cortisol, endogenous cortisol and extra cortisol in the mice by imaging. And when we applied excess stress to mice, we can see this signal goes up, and this increased signal goes away by treating with CPA, the active antagonist. So I mainly talked about GR-based sensors, but we also built estrogen sensors, which can recognize estrogen agonist, antagonist, and ego-enta sensor, and EGF detecting sensor, epidermal growth factor detecting sensor, and What else? And then we also utilized our sensor system to monitor cell differentiation. So we targeted differentiation biomarker, and we could see differentiation of cells to neuronal cells in real time without, in single cell level resolution without disrupting cell differentiation. Nowadays, I'm interested in aging, but next time, perhaps I hope I can talk about this research. So this work was done by my current student and previous member, Hyunjin Jeon, and also I got a lot of help from collaborators. So thanks for your attention.